Mr Limbrick.
Thank you, Acting President. I'm pleased to speak in support of the Liberal Democrats' Emergency Safeguards Bill, but I'm also dismayed that we need to debate democratic decision-making and accountability in this place. Ever since the state of emergency was first called in March last year, I've done my utmost in this place and in the Public Accounts and Estimates Committee to find out how the government justifies locking up 6.5 million Victorians and restricting their human rights without a vote. I've asked many different questions, all in good faith, but the answers amount to the same thing. The harms are not measured, there is no published medical advice, and the human rights assessments are secret. I feel the same frustration as my constituents when they tell me they are not being heard by the government. The government are not listening to members of Parliament either, largely because this seemingly endless state of emergency means they don't have to. When I asked senior health bureaucrats about the mental health impacts on kids who are not coping with online learning, they admitted their decisions have nothing to do with the safety of children, just some vague idea about preventing movement in the community. Since the government cannot say what the harms are, I have had to turn to feedback from my constituents. This has come in the form of phone calls, messages on social media, and letters. These people are not activists. Many are just mums and dads who are worried sick about their kids, business owners worried about going bankrupt, and people who live alone who worry about their own mental health. A social media page, Voice for Victoria, has provided a great service by collecting hundreds of these stories from people struggling under lockdown on their Instagram and Twitter pages. I'm not going to read the worst of these because some are extremely harrowing. However, I'll tell you a few to give you an idea of the kind of messages I receive and I assume other members of Parliament also receive. A young mother said lockdown had caused maternal healthcare workers to cancel all of their appointments. Her 18-month-old had not had a single health professional lay eyes on her in 14 months. The young mother described the experience as isolating and extremely worrying. Another mother said that during the first 2 lockdowns, her toddler stopped going to childcare. When the parks opened up, she would become hysterical any time another child came within a metre of her. She said damage during that time was far worse than the slight risk of either of them contracting the virus. Another one said how all 3 of her girls, aged 13, 11 and 8, have cried their eyes out at some point and are pessimistic about their futures. They don't understand why the government doesn't care about their mental health. Another told of a daughter who was so depressed that she wouldn't get out of bed. She put on 15 kilograms of weight. And then when she went back to school, she was bullied. Another said her 14-year-old son became totally disengaged from school last year. He hasn't left his bedroom except to eat since it started, and he's really worried about his future. A worker at a school with many disadvantaged students told of being approached by a student who was crying because her home was not safe. Hearing stories like these creates a terrible feeling of helplessness for me, because there's only so much that I can do. My heart goes out to them. I can point people to support services, I can make an occasional speech or raise an issue in Parliament, but I cannot make a meaningful vote about any individual lockdown or other specific measures taken under the state of emergency. And this is a travesty. This is not how democracy should work. Members of Parliament are here to represent the people so they can be heard at the highest level. That's why we are here. And I understand that some of you may balk at elements of the bill that would jail politicians or bureaucrats for recklessly issuing unlawful orders. But if an individual can be jailed for unlawful imprisonment of one person, why shouldn't a politician or bureaucrat be held accountable for locking up millions? Accountability is the element that has been missing. And this bill will rectify that glaring omission and put an end to the undemocratic state-sanctioned bullying that we have seen witnessed over the last year. I would urge my fellow members here to ask themselves whether they are truly reassured that all of the directions are proportionate and the least restrictive of rights as required by the law. When the underlying medical advice and the Human Rights Charter assessments are not made public, how can you truly know if the actions of the government are legal? How can anyone?